Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 199th episode of Real Hawk Talk. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter at Hawk Blogger, and we've got a good show for you tonight. We've got a very special guest, and before I introduce our special guest, who's actually a friend of the show, if I remember correctly, Jake was on this show before he was on his own show, but we'll talk about that. We also have one of the rarest sightings of late on Seahawks Twitter, Evan Hill, at Evan Hill HB. After 67 straight days of yoga, he has emerged from his meditative state to troll Jake and talk Seahawks. It's going to be fun. Good to see you, Evan. How are you doing?
I am doing so well. I am so rejuvenated for this conversation, and I cannot believe we brought on somebody with such bad food opinions for tonight's show.
Shots fired already. I mean, he hasn't even said a word yet.
He likes this. He likes this one horrible pizza place. It's called like Table. What's it called, Jake? It's like some.
Oh, hey, Evan, don't try to pretend like you don't know. It's Round Table and put some respect on its name.
Round Table.
Evan is completely off. Round Table is one of the top underrated pizza franchises, specifically for pepperoni. Absolute upper crust pepperoni pizza.
Where are they even located? I've actually genuinely never seen one.
Well, I mean, Evan, it's your loss, man. I guess it's only the cool kids club that gets the chance to eat Round Table. So, you know, look,
I didn't know you were a Round Table aficionado. That is actually, I already had a modicum of respect for you, but now this is starting on the right foot. And generally, if you disagree with an Evan food take, you're in pretty good company.
Yeah, I feel very comfortable to not agree with Evan or Stacey Ross about any food takes. That's a great space to be in.
Yeah, that's definitely a come up. We had your co-host. That is the voice, if you haven't already figured out, of Jake Heaps, former quarterback in the area, almost Husky, but not Husky, went abroad, went to the NFL, was on the Seahawks in training camp, runs the Russell Wilson quarterback camp. I mean, this guy has now established himself in Seattle Sports Radio as the understudy for Stacey Ross on the Jake and Stacey show on 710 ESPN every morning at 10 a.m. And he is at Jake Heaps. So let's see, I'm going to make sure I got this right. It is JT Heaps 9 on Twitter. You got to follow him. He's must follow. And it is great to have you back, dude. How have you been? The last time we spoke to you was prior to you, like it was probably a few weeks prior to you signing up at 710 and getting that whole charade started. How's life treating you, man?
Life's good. I mean, since then, yeah, it feels like it's been forever since that time, last time on. But lots of life has happened in between then. Added 2 more kids to the equation to our family. Now feel like I am a hardened pro with the radio gig. So it's been fun, man. Yeah, it's been a blast. And I'll tell you what, we've been through some unique times here in Seattle over the course of the last 3-4 years now. So it's been fun. There's been a lot of hard conversations that have happened from now and then. But the one thing that remains is the passion for the Seahawks and ultimately wanting to see them hoist the Lombardi Trophy again. It's just a matter of disagreeing or figuring out the right path for everybody. But I got to tell you, it's been great. It's been a blessing, and I seriously enjoy all the back and forth, all the conversations that we have had over the years, and it's truly been fun.
What's been the biggest surprise for you since you became a radio superstar? Like what's been the aspect of the job that maybe you didn't expect going in?
Honestly, the connection with everybody. I had heard about the relationships that you have with your audience from radio, and really it's truly the most intimate form of media, right? And you hear those things and you don't really understand it until you get into it, and you develop relationships and connections with people, and you're part of people's everyday lives. And so that to me has been honestly one of the coolest aspects of it. And Again, you might not agree with everyone. Not everybody loves what you have to say, or some people do. But I love and appreciate each side of it, truly. And so that part of it's been really cool. The connection part, reconnecting back with the community from that aspect has been really cool. I've really enjoyed that, whether it's discourse on Twitter or, via the radio. I think that part of it's been what I've enjoyed the most.
So you and Stacy was on a couple shows ago, a couple weeks ago. Did you guys know each other at all before? Because I've listened to all sorts of sports radio, and there are times where the co-host, it is clearly forced, and they're trying and they're professionals. And, there's other times where it sounds good, but you still can kind of catch it now and then where it's not. You guys just sound like brother and sister from like the start. Like, was there any previous like experience, or just worked?
No, I think it just clicked. And also our producer, Curtis Rogers, is a huge part of that. The three of us just have a ton of fun together. I think that's the biggest thing, Brian, is we take pride in what we do, but ultimately I don't take myself too seriously like that. I think that's the biggest thing is that neither one of us and the three of us come in onto when we crack the mic, we understand that there's other opinions out there that have, validity, and we want to express what we believe and how we feel about certain topics, but we just want to have fun. I mean, we're going to do this 5 days a week, all year round. There needs to be some levity to the situation. And I think for Stacy and I, specifically, I think we connected on that level very quickly. Just wanted to have a lot of fun and kind of bring a different sound to radio. And I think that you hear a lot of people that, want to come up there and it's great, but sound very serious. And they are the ones that have all the answers and everything else. And I'm just here to share my experience, my thoughts. And if people dig them, then great. If they don't, then tell me why you don't, and let's talk about it. But ultimately, I think that's why our show has been able to click so well and why we've been able to have so much fun from day one. And it's been a blast. I mean, truly, we really have a great time.
Yeah, it's an awesome show. Love listening to it. Definitely regular listener.
Thanks, man.
So Evan, I want to ask Jake some uncomfortable questions because we've got to kind of introduce him to the show before we get into the fun stuff about Seahawks. So my first question, because I'm kind of queuing you up, Evan, to think about what your questions are going to be here. But my first question, you got Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. Rank them for me in order of your usage.
Oh, it's not even close. It's number 1, Twitter, number 2, Instagram, number 3, TikTok, and it's all the way at the bottom. Like I don't even use TikTok at all. No, that's like a generation that's kind of passed me by where I just never got it and never really wanted to get into it. I feel like an old man when it comes to TikTok, but I absolutely use Twitter, every day, Instagram every day. Those are easily my 2 favorite mediums.
Are you a blocker or a muter on Twitter?
He just has to. You just got to check to see what he's done to my account online, and then we'll know.
See, here's the thing: I am too nice of a person to block. So if I block you, there is a real genuine reason. Like you screwed up. Like you screwed up. If I'm blocking you, you need to go look yourself in the mirror, have some reflection, and think about what you did. But for me, I'm more of a muter. It's basically the same thing without the repercussions of telling someone that you blocked them, right?
Yes. Evan.
Jake, I was watching the show a couple of weeks ago, and, your voice disappeared for like the last 45 minutes. Did you walk out on your job or did you quit?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't stand being around Stacy and Curtis anymore, so I had to get the heck out of there. And I had to make up some excuse, but no, for real. That morning, my wife and I, she made me breakfast. She ate the same thing I did, and literally out of nowhere, during the middle of the show, I started to feel sick, and I was like, this is weird. And in between one of the breaks, I made it all the way through a 10-minute segment fighting it. And I went outside. So like right now I'm in my shed that I have in my yard. So I recreated the shed during COVID and turned it into a little studio. And I went straight for the door and I threw up right outside the door. I'm glad my neighbors weren't right there. And I tried to come back. I tried to toughen it out, which I know Evan would never do. He would just pack it in right then and there. And I tried to come back and I couldn't do it. I lasted for like 2 minutes in the next segment and then I was done. It was over. And
hold on, Jake, this makes a ton of sense though. This makes a ton of sense. You just had roundtable the night before.
I knew that was coming.
Yeah, of course. You know how, Brian, how long had you said that he has been doing some yoga venture? Or
67 days, brother. 67.
So 67 days, it's really sad that you had to go on that adventure just to come for this moment with that joke. I mean, Evan, you could have done better, my friend. Come on now.
Ouch.
I do actually have a serious Seahawks question, just to segue us a little bit. What is the number one position group that Seattle needs to target in free agency this year?
Man, to me, it's not even close in terms of what they need to do. In my opinion, it has to be 1A, 1B, offensive line and defensive line pass rush. And to me, that's how I view it. I view it just as equally as important in terms of the way that you look at their roster, what they've tried to do in the past and what hasn't worked. They need to, we talk about status quo or changing status quo. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's got to be in big changes with Pete Carroll or John Schneider or Russell Wilson, but you got to be able to pivot and look at some of the things that you've done and the way that they've tried to approach their pass rush and their offensive line. I'm sorry, I don't give them credit for trying to address it. They got to fix it. You got to fix your problems. And that to me is the one area that you absolutely 100% have to change in terms of your status quo. But I would say, if you're going to pin me down on one position group more so than the other, I would prioritize pass rush more so than the offensive line. And again, it's very close, but I believe that you have the biggest hole on your pass rush, like by far the biggest hole in your pass rush.
So I have one follow-up question for you. One area that nobody is talking about, and I think many people are just assuming Dwayne Brown is going to be back. He's not under contract for 2022. We don't have a starting left tackle right now. It's a void year in his contract for 2022. Do you think they should look outside of him? Obviously, he's like super old, 37, 38 years old. Or should they look at, keeping him for another year or two while they target that position in the draft? I just feel like that position specifically is not getting enough attention as we enter free agency.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you, Evan. I do believe that it's been a poor job of planning for life after Dwayne Brown. And now you're in a position where it's uncomfortable because you are going to have to go on this 1 year deal basis. And until you figure out what that replacement is going to be, unless the Seahawks, unless John Schneider and Pete Carroll have a trick up their sleeve like the Kansas City Chiefs did, and going out and being uber aggressive and trading for somebody like Orlando Brown that no one really saw coming, there's not really a clear answer as to how you upgrade and how you change that position. For me, as I look at this year specifically, Brian, I know you put something out there that Teron Armstead was somebody that you would like to go. Teron Armstead is somebody that you'd like to go after. And I would disagree with you a little bit there just because I think the price tag is higher. And the one great thing that from Dwayne Brown, even if he's not the same player, is that he's not progressively getting significantly worse. And he is somebody that I believe and trust is going to be available through the year. Whereas Teron Armstead has struggled to stay healthy on a consistent basis. Amazing player, all-pro player, guaranteed when he's on the field, kind of like Jack Conklin. But that's why I would pick Dwayne Brown. And that's why, Evan, if I was to give you a percentage point, I would say that I am 90% confident Dwayne Brown comes back as a Seahawk this year.
Hmm. Well, yeah, I think the chances are relatively good as well. I think I think we've heard Orlando Brown's most likely to get franchise tagged. That's not a surprise after the Chiefs gave up a first round pick for him. Armstead, I wouldn't be surprised if a team like the Bengals, or some team that wants to spend top
Right.
dollar on their left tackle goes in on him. And I do think guys like Trent Brown and Eric Fisher are at least worth a conversation relative to Dwayne Brown. They're younger and you might get some upside there, but they have injury issues. And I think Dwayne Brown's a guy who, yeah, he's been there, but I would disagree that he did not have a significant step back this year, like regress and the quality of player he was.
Mm-hmm.
And he also just looks like, I don't think we can count on him being available. I hope you're right if that's the way they go, but at his age and with his the way he's moving around, that seems that seems hopeful. But we agree on the likelihood that the way I kind of see it is either you go for an alpha on the offensive line, or you go for an alpha on the edge, right? And alphas on the edge are like Chandler Jones, Von Miller. We might see a Zadarius Smith or even Daniel Hunter come out from cap cuts. Those are possible. All of those guys, if you could have one of them, I think the Seahawks are much more likely to go after an edge rusher and spend that kind of money than go after a left tackle.
I very much agree. And when it comes down to who we're talking about Pete Carroll here. And ultimately, what does Pete Carroll envision this team being, and what does he want this team to be? The first thing that Pete Carroll thinks about is defense. How can I get my defense right? How can I get it back? And that's why I am more confident that they're going to go after top shelf, top tier pass rushers to go along with Darrell Taylor. And hopefully you keep Carlos Dunlap to go along with that. And, one of those guys that you mentioned that really intrigues me is Zadarius Smith. I think Zadarius Smith is that alpha dog personality on and off the field that just kind of brings that edge to your team that you haven't had in a little bit. That I think really would be an exciting leader in the locker room. Personally, if I had to choose from that bunch, I think Chandler Jones is one of the premier edge rushers, and you can get the sack totals and everything else. One of the things that he has not been just absolutely stellar at is defending the run over his career. Mm-hmm. He hasn't been, a complete player for his entire career, but certainly he is better than anything that you've had in quite some time. So it's not being picky or choosy here. So any one of those guys that you just mentioned, Brian, I'm going, yes, let's do it. Because they would bring such a different dimension to this defense and a much needed dimension to this defense.
Yeah, there's one other name that I brought up in the article I think you're referencing on hawkblogger.com about free agents that no one's talking about yet, but I'm wondering if this is going to show up, which is Cam Jordan. The Saints are $70 million over the cap. It's not advantageous for them to trade him ahead of June 1st, but where do you put him in that group? Like, where does he fit?
Gosh, he's a unique one because Cam Jordan is a great football player, right? He is a great football player, and for a long time he has been a great sack artist, a good overall player in the run game as well. And he's coming off of a very good season, 12 and a half sack season. He's somebody that really intrigues me. And then the same thing as I talked about Zadarius Smith, an alpha dog personality that brings a commanding presence. He's been very consistent in his career. And he's somebody that I would greatly be interested in. And that is the type of player, Brian, that the Seahawks do target, that they do profile, that after the second or third wave of free agency, that they're going to hold out and they're going to try and play that card and see if they can get Cam Jordan on a cheaper deal past June 1st. And not have to give up as much because the Saints are desperate to offload their contracts. So I would say that it could be very likely that the Seahawks are very aggressive, go get a top-tier premier edge rusher, and then if the cards play into their favor, go add another with someone like Cam Jordan as you watch the market unfold and watch the Saints have to wholesale change what they're trying to do.
Yeah, so one of the things we've talked about on the show, and I know you talked about it in your show as well, the Jamal Adams deal, right?
Yeah.
No one, I don't think there's anyone outside of the organization that is credibly going to argue that deal's worked out. So for the price paid, right? Like so I think people get really wrapped up in the cost of the trade and the sunk cost.
Yes.
And separate out from whether this player is good and whether this player can be good, right? And
fully agree.
One of my questions for you is, let's say that they do, in the ideal world, they do upgrade this pass rush. And let's say that they get someone on the edge, and let's say they get someone on the inside. Maybe it's a Akeem Hicks, or maybe it's a Calais Campbell, or, who knows, DJ Jones, whatever. How do you think that could affect Jamal Adams' ability to impact the defense as a pass rusher, as a blitzer? How would that affect how offenses have to account for him versus how they're accounting for him right now?
Yeah, it would make the world of difference. And here's why. If you're not willing to embrace this is a discussion I could have for an hour. Yeah. But with Jamal Adams, I will fight to the death in terms of saying he is a phenomenal football player. He is one of the best defensive players out there in the game. That is the impact that he is capable of having. However, it just blows my mind that you're not willing to schematically change what you do to fit his strengths. And Brian, I'm watching them in training camp and I'm seeing those things. I'm watching them do unique and cool stuff with their blitz packages. And I'm sitting there going, man, if I'm a quarterback right now and I'm having to figure out pressure packages and who's coming and who's not, they're doing some tough stuff right now. And I love it. And that's what's going to bring the best out of Jamal Adams. And I think ultimately this defense. But they didn't do that. They went back. They went more conservative. And then once your pass rushers weren't going well, you changed completely and really focused in on trying to be a run-stopping defense, which I think was the right decision given the situation. They're trying to plug holes and just figure out the best solution, figure out something. And what that's done, though, it's alienated Jamal Adams. It's alienated his ability to have a great impact on the game. And when he doesn't generate sacks, when he doesn't generate tackles for loss or quarterback hits, that is malpractice. And I believe that if you change your personnel, then you can't automatically change your slide protections to Jamal Adams right out of the gate, because if you do that, now you're leaving Zadarius Smith one-on-one with the tackle, or you're leaving Chandler Jones one-on-one with the tackle. You're leaving Akeem Hicks one-on-one interior-wise, right? And that is favorable. And so it works well off of each other. And that would be the next step if Pete Carroll doesn't, and this defense, whoever the defensive coordinator is going to be, don't want to embrace that style of defense that is more of a pressure-oriented defense to get the most out of Jamal Adams. And one quick thing before we move on, I just want to say that has just blown my mind sometimes. Sometimes, you get in these press conferences and Pete is, he's very candid and he's open and he wants to teach the audience, which I think is awesome. But sometimes, in the conversation of Jamal Adams, for instance, when he was asked, why are you stopping to pressure as much as you did early on? And he said, well, teams are just recognizing it right away and teams are, adjusting to it. Well, okay, then what are you doing to combat that? What are you doing to free him up? And so, all right, let's show Jamal Adams in a typical blitz and let's bring Marquise Blair off the edge. Let's bring Ugo Amadi off the edge. Let's use two great blitzing linebackers that you have in Bobby Wagner and Jordan Brooks, right? Like you have the personnel to be able to combat that and then free up Jamal Adams again. Because you don't know where the pressure's coming from. And so that to me in this season has really been head scratching. And it's something that I hope that they can figure out the answer, because Jamal Adams is still a very good player and has the ability to be worth maybe not totally what that compensation package ended up being, but definitely being worth it, in terms of this defense becoming a good, impactful defense.
Yeah, that's you're speaking my language. So, I think the question there that a lot of us have is the new defensive coordinator going to be able to have the influence to make those changes? And I know some of the names that are already out there. We haven't heard as much about since the initial flurry of names. Sean Desai, we heard Clint Hurt, we've heard Ed Donatel. I personally have this hope, Sean Desai gets the DC, and then you get Ed Donatel as the secondary guy because he won't get a DC job anywhere else. And you get Clint Hurt, and you got Vic Fangio's, coaching staff. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
But now there's another one that I think I thought was completely ridiculous, but now maybe is interesting, is Brian Flores, because of what happened today, all the news that's breaking with Brian Flores. This hasn't been linked to the Seahawks yet, but his chances at a head coach job seem pretty unlikely. Do you think that there's a chance that a guy like Brian Flores could become a candidate for DC in Seattle?
Potentially. The only thing that I think gets in the way of this is, what is Brian Flores' ultimate mission? Is it to make a statement and then to hold out for a head coaching position? Because if I'm Brian Flores, I'm sitting here saying, look, I'm just as good as any of these other candidates, and I should be interviewing for head coaching jobs, and I should get a head coaching job. I should not have to go back to becoming a defensive coordinator again. And maybe he goes through the coaching cycle one more time, like DeMeco Ryans is right now with the 49ers. He elected to come back. Maybe Brian Flores is willing to do that under Pete Carroll. That is a possibility. But I just have a really hard time thinking that he is going to want to do that from a headspace perspective, Brian. That's a lot that he's taken on right now.
Yeah,
he's taken on a monster, and he is willing to do it. And I think that more so than anything else, he's willing to make a big statement, and the right statement, by the way, by sticking it to the NFL and saying, look, not only am I going to sue you, but I'm going to make you look really, really bad if no one comes after me for a head coaching gig after this. And I think that the NFL has a PR nightmare on their hands. And quite frankly, I think Brian Flores would be letting I think he would be letting all the organizations off the hook by becoming a defensive coordinator again.
Interesting.
So that's my perspective on it. Pete Carroll is awesome. If he gives me the autonomy that I want, then with a working relationship for a year, stay in the game. Yeah, I could absolutely do that. But I just see it as an unlikely situation, just because I think from a mental perspective, Flores is going to be taking on a lot. And I think that he's going to hold out for a head coaching job to make a point one way or the other. And I respect the heck out of it for him. And quite frankly, this should have been done a long time ago with how the Rooney Rule has been applied and how it's been used in the past.
Yeah. Evan, I was about to go into some Patreon questions. Did you have something before I do that?
Yeah, actually, I just wanted to go back to the Dwayne Brown thing for 1 second. The conversation last year around him, ultimately taking the 1 year sort of like stopgap deal was really frustration over what he feels he's valued at. You said you have a high degree of confidence or something like that he'll be back next year. Is there a number that you would feel uncomfortable at, either on a solo year or a multi-year deal? Like, what would be your whole strategy with him, assuming you want to bring him back?
Well, I think pretty clearly right now, Dwayne Brown is in that $10 million range. Like anything above that, if he starts to push for 14, 15, there's no way. I think that 10 to 12 would be the max. I personally think, and also Dwayne Brown strikes me as the individual right now that the relationship between him and the organization is very clear. That Dwayne Brown's kind of at the stage in his career where he likes Seattle, he knows Seattle, and that's where he wants to play if they'll have him. And so if Seattle wants him back and they can come to that agreement, I do believe Dwayne Brown signs on. And I feel like that is more financially prudent to solve your problems. The reality is the Seahawks are not going to wholesale change their offensive line aggressively like the Kansas City Chiefs did. They're not going to go and trade high capital for a left tackle. They're not going to go spend high market for Joe Thuney. And who knows what they're going to do in the draft. And I just don't see them, drafting the next Creed Humphreys. So
Hey.
what I would
Why
like
does everyone
to
have
see.
to say that on this show? Does everybody
I'm
just
sorry.
have to come on here and troll me about Creed Humphrey?
Well, it's the track record, man. I'm sorry. It
I
is
know,
what
man.
it is. And so how I view this is, if I'm looking at upgrading my offensive line and I'm being really, really realistic about it, I want to bring back Dwayne Brown. I know what I'm getting in him. I'm comfortable with him. He's a war daddy. He's going to be available. And I trust him to be available through the season, because that's just who Dwayne Brown is. He's going to fight through injuries. He's going to tough it out. And you know what you have in him. Then the other aspect is, okay, can we finally fix the wrong and get the bad mojo away from trading Max Unger and get ourselves a quality, bona fide center? And I believe that when you do that, you elevate Damian Lewis's play, you elevate Gabe Jackson's play, and that helps anchor your offensive line. And that's what you really, really need. I don't know of too many great right tackles that are out there in the market right now, but what I do see is that there are going to be a good range of centers that you could look at and absolutely say, these guys can make a big difference. These guys could be a big upgrade for this offensive line. And that's why I would go in that direction. So if you bring back Dwayne Brown, you really truly get one of the best centers available in the market. I do believe that you should expect much improved play from this offensive line, both in the run game and the passing game.
All right. We've got a bunch of questions, and I know Jake's only got a little bit more time. So we're going to try to rifle through a couple of these, and we'll get you out of here to your lovely family. So
can I just say real quick, that war daddy phrase cracked me up. Calling Dwayne Brown a war daddy. That's amazing.
He is, man.
You haven't heard that?
He is.
I've never heard that phrase.
Oh, I love that. That's a football term for sure,
the
man.
War daddy.
So patreon.com/hawkblogger. If you haven't already joined, please do. We give all the money to charity, and you get access to the Slack channel immediately, where you get to ask questions to cool people like Jake Heaps, and even cooler people like Stacey Rost. But she paid
I'm
me.
Assuming I was going to say, yeah, I mean, a cool 20. Like what was the asking price?
He agreed that she's going to eat nachos at Matador. We're all going to do that. It's going to happen. So just prepare. Your wife and kids are welcome to. Actually, kids can't come. It's 21 and over. But anyway, Ryan Cleveland,
we'll get a babysitter.
He says, Jake, thanks for being here tonight. Seems like there's a lot of assumptions about your relationship with Russ and how that impacts your take to the Hawks. What assumptions do people make about you and Russ that are flat out wrong? Oh,
man. This is a fantastic question. I would say that in this business, what my job is to bring my perspective. My job is to bring my perspective and show what I think is going on with the situation. You may not agree with it. That's fine. And, Russell and I have a great relationship. We're very close. We're both quarterbacks. And so, I think we have a very similar perspective in certain situations. However, I think that it is overstated by, I've seen it a lot, that he's just a mouthpiece. Whatever he says is what Russell's saying, this and that. And it's just not true. There's lots of things that I say that Russell actually comes back and says, like, dude, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on? And that's fine. But I also would say this is that I have been very open and honest about my relationship and that dynamic from day one. Haven't hidden it, haven't tried to hide it. And that is not the same for every talking head here in Seattle. If you think that everybody else sits here and says, exactly what they think, then you're wrong. Everybody gets in this town, everybody gets information from somewhere. And I'll leave it at that. And not everybody is forthcoming in terms of, what relationships they have or how their opinion is formulated. And I've never hidden my relationships with Russell or other guys on the team for that matter. Relationships or, past experience with the Seahawks, with the organization, with Pete Carroll, with John Schneider. And so my perspective comes from my playing days. It comes from my experience being in that building. And I try to call it as much as I see it. And it has nothing to do with what Russell thinks or what his opinions are about it. The only time that I genuinely share his opinion on stuff is like or information that comes out is, stuff like his contract negotiation that happened back in 2018, or this recent report that came out from Ian Rappaport. It's just like, there's certain things that I think people should know, are where is this coming from and how is it being reported? But I guarantee you, I'm very capable of coming with my own thoughts and formulating my own thoughts. So
awesome. Can we ask you a couple more? Can we keep you a couple more minutes?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. From DJ Burnett, Jake, what would it take to have Russell Wilson Wednesdays? Tom Brady has a podcast on Monday. The Pat McAfee show has Aaron Rodgers on Tuesdays. Feel like it would only be right to have Russ on Wednesdays.
There's actually been some conversation in that. Would love to make that happen. Would love to make that a reality. Russell's tried his hand in having a podcast himself, over the last couple of years and all that. And so I think, at some point, maybe that will happen in the not so distant future. So we'll see. We'll see.
Love it. All right. Two more. And if Evan, if you want to stick one in there, feel free. So a common question we get, and I'm curious your thoughts as a quarterback and someone who knows some of these guys. We see amazing chemistry between Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett. And then we see DK Metcalf, who looked like he was developing amazing chemistry with Russ the first couple of seasons. And this season, it really looked like they had trouble connecting on some basic routes. And, Matt Hasselbeck talked about it on Salk's show. And, we all saw it. What can be some reasons, like without going too deep on this, when you see that and you're a quarterback, what are you thinking needs to happen in order to get them to be an unbeatable pairing? Like I think we all believe they should be.
Not a whole lot more than going through it. The best way that I can describe this is that, look, Russell also wasn't himself. He wasn't on the field for 3 weeks and then clearly wasn't himself for another 3 weeks. And that impacted things. And I really, truly, believe that. And I think it was very evident to the eye. But the other side of it is that, I think that Tyler is the way I would describe him as a receiver is very similar to Doug, is that they're feelers. It's not necessarily about how the route is run on the paper. It is how they feel the game and how they feel the zones and how they understand that and understand space. And so and Russell is very much that player when he gets into scramble modes or second reaction plays where the first play doesn't work and then it's time for the second play. So I believe there's an easy connection there. Whereas, Russell and DK, they have a different relationship, a different connection where it has to be a little bit more technical and it has to be a little bit more route oriented, whether it's back shoulder throws, whether it's, running the route tree and being on time and in rhythm. And so I think to put it in its simplest form for this year in particular, there were a lot of firsts that happened out there on the field. A lot of firsts of DK running choice routes, DK running different routes in the route tree. And so for me, as I watched that, the perfect example I could say to you is, remember the Chicago Bears game where it's 3rd and 5 and DK kills the guy and Russell overthrows him. You guys know what I'm talking about. It was like late in the game. I think it was 3rd or 4th quarter. And you're going automatically, oh, it's the finger. That's the finger. Gosh, how could he miss him? Well, what happened was DK Metcalf's running a choice route. And he puts an unbelievable move on the guy, but he makes it so big and dramatic that, and again, DK's not doing anything wrong, but Russell's double clutching. He's not expecting that to happen. And therefore, he kind of gets in a panic mode and overthrows it. Well, Russell should hit that. It should be something that's completed and you move on. It's not a big deal. But what I would say is that is a perfect illustration of there were a lot of firsts that were going on in Shane Waldron's offense between Russell and DK. And unfortunately, it wasn't a seamless process. So what my expectations are and what my belief is that year 2 under Shane Waldron's offense will be significantly better. And that relationship and that chemistry will be much, much better going into this next season. And you saw that jump from year one to year two under Brian Schottenheimer's offense as well between Russ and DK. I expect a similar deal here between the two of them.
Awesome. Okay. Last thing, I I promised someone I would do this on your way out. So
hey, all good.
On January 9th, I tweeted Rashad Penny ran for 671 yards over the last 5 games. That's 134.2 yards per game, 281 yards over the course of a full 17-game season. And there's this great show that's on 710 the next day. This came on.
Because of how dynamic and unique and special he was to finish out the year. But people coming up and saying, look, Rashad Penny, what he did over the last 5 games, here's the average. It's over 134 yards per game. That would have equated to over 2,200 something yards over the course of a full 17-game season. That is the most worthless stat you could possibly give me at this current moment in time. You want to know what?
And I just, I had to promote the show and say, where's the at? Where's the at, Jake? Like, can't you just add me, man?
I should have. You're 100% right. Unfortunately, in my head, I said this is Hawk Blogger, but I also saw it from 2 other people as well. So I was addressing a group, but you're right. I should have given you the credit, man. You're 100% man. Right.
I work really hard on useless numbers. People know that. That's my brand. Evan knows that.
You know what? In all seriousness, it is something that I also look forward to after games. I look forward to the stats that you put together and compile. But that to me was also something when it comes to the discourse of the end of the season, the discourse of what Rashad Penny can be and the hope that he can be. To me, I just was not in the moment to sit there and say, look, all of these sins that happened through the season can be forgiven because of the last 2 weeks or the last run of Rashad Penny. There's still some serious questions. And I would love to be able to apply those stats from the last 6 weeks of what Rashad Penny did, which was just mind-blowing. It was incredible. But I cannot picture and envision Rashad Penny doing this for 17 weeks next year. He's got to show it. And I hope that he is truly a new man and they've got to figure it out. But I also believe that there's a lot of wishful thinking that goes on with us just naturally as fans as we go, look at the last 2 weeks, look at how they did this, look at how they did that. And that's the type of team that they're going to be. There's a lot more to the equation and they've got a lot more things to figure out to get that level of performance out of Rashad Penny all year long.
You take me far too seriously, Jake. I admit I just picked myself up out of the puddle of tears that I've been wading in for the last few weeks. But yeah, man, that was awesome. I laughed out loud when someone sent that to me. So that was
man.
Great. And
no, I just had to explain my mental state at that time. You know what? I love it because I think that truly in this business, so many people take themselves so seriously. And the one thing that I've really appreciated is to be able to have the back and forth between us and everyone, associated with Hawk Blogger, and to be able to know that, look, it's not personal. And to me, that is the most important thing throughout this entire discourse. Is we can disagree on certain things and all that, but this should never be personal. And we should always be able to poke fun at each other or call each other out and call each other stupid and still be good at the end of the day.
It's not personal unless you attack Matador Nachos. Then it becomes very, very personal.
Your co-host is in the crosshairs. This is not going to stand.
Well, rightfully so, and I can't defend her whatsoever. I'm not going to. So have at it, guys.
Hey, that is Jake Heaps. Thank you so much for coming on the show. That is JT Heaps 9 on Twitter, on 710 ESPN every morning at 10 a.m. with Stacey Rost. Great show. Must listen. Listen to their podcast on Spotify, everywhere that you can find podcasts. Absolute friend of the show. And Jake, really appreciate it. And thank your family for giving you up for an hour tonight.
Absolutely, guys. It was fun. It was a blast. Let's do this again. And looking forward to it, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good to see you.
See you, Evan.
See you, brother.
All right. That was
he is so fun.
That
I
was
love Jake.
Yeah, man. I wish we could have him for another, 20 minutes, half an hour. He's got young kids. I'm sure his wife is like, dude.
How big is his squad? Is it 4?
Oh, I don't know. They were multiplying for a while there. I lost track.
He's building a football team over there.
He is, man. I know a lot of people wanted to hear what his thoughts were about the Richard Sherman stuff and the Cliff Averill conversation. We just didn't have time. Like,
can we talk about the Sherm stuff though?
Yeah. What were your thoughts on that?
God, he just came across as so bitchy, and just such a sore. It doesn't sound like he's over Seattle cutting him. And I don't like saying that because I really like Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
I really like him.
Yeah.
Player, person. But man, that interview just did not sit well with me. What was your perspective?
Well, so a lot of people are talking about the Richard Sherman Cliff Averill piece. Less people are talking about the KJ Wright interview that was also on KJR like yesterday, I want to say.
Yeah.
And KJ was very similar vibe, man. KJ was like, hey, I don't think you can blame this on one guy. And if you're going to say, I'm not the type of leader that I would say, hey, if my assistant's got to go, I would be like, I got to go. He's like basically saying, hey, this is Pete as much as it is Ken Norton Jr. Obviously, KJ was a linebacker. He was a Ken Norton Jr. guy. But then KJ went as far as to say things like, hey, last year wouldn't have happened if they had me on the team. Playing Sam linebacker for 20% of the downs instead of Benson Mayowa. I have a ton of respect for these guys as players and as people. They're smart. They're incredibly talented. They're good people. Mm-hmm. But they also have troubles. They are very self.
They have a high degree of
almost like the wrong word, but they have a hard time seeing past their own reality. And I think they especially have a hard time when they're no longer the impact players they once were. I don't think that translates well to somebody who's been as special as they've been for as long as they've been.
Yeah, I think I give those same critiques while simultaneously acknowledging that if I was in their position, I'd probably be saying similar things as well. You spend a good chunk. No, in KJ's case, 100% of his entire professional football playing career in a specific, with a specific employer. And then they choose to go another direction and you hang around really hoping that, you can continue, finish, maybe retire there. It's got to hit personally, right?
Oh yeah.
As much as, it's business, that would impact me personally as well. So I get it. They're human. It's emotional, but at the same time, I think their comments are not super wise.
Well, the other interesting aspect of the angle of this, Evan, I'm curious your thoughts. So the way you look at it, people are kind of trying to figure out who are they taking the shot at? Is it a Pete comment? But then they're also no, Pete, you can't get rid of Pete. They've all come out pretty much and said that. I think even Sherm said that. And so one of the things I've observed over time, and I'm not sure how real this is that I think Pete basically has created it where he's the good cop and he's always talking up the players. He always sees the most positive in them. He's maintaining the relationships, even with Sherm when he's on the 49ers and stuff. I think John's the heavy. And I think John's in there saying Cap can't cost, can't afford you. And maybe he's not the one that's actually having positive relationship building stuff. Maybe it gets kind of tough. And I give Nathan credit on this. He was bringing it up because it's a good memory. People talked about that when Mike Holmgren was the GM and the coach here, that it was hard for him to be on one side, sitting across the table from the agent and the player saying you're not worth this much money. And on the other side, coaching them up and telling them why they're great. So I'm wondering if these people, a lot of this is about John Schneider when they're talking about this stuff.
Well, it's funny you mentioned this. Actually, I had a player tell me a couple of years ago who was cut by Seattle, and I won't give his name obviously, but he was telling me the story of how he was cut, and basically he received a text and then a phone call from John Schneider. This is just one situation, by the way. So I have no idea if it happens in other situations, but basically he received a text and a phone call from John Schneider informing him of the decision that they were making, and then Pete Carroll followed up basically saying, "Hey man, love you as a player. Wanted to keep you, but we live in an era of the salary cap, blah, blah, blah." I can totally see how that does play like a good cop, bad cop type of scenario. And maybe it's unintentional or maybe it's intentional. I don't know, but I don't think that's an off base like assumption at all.
Yeah. Think about how Pete Carroll talks about every single player. I'd love to bring him back. There's been rarely any situation where Pete Carroll's like, yeah, not interested. Even players not on his team, he's just glowing in that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and you and I have talked to agents and we know different folks, and a lot of times it's directed at John. That's who they're trying to influence, and which is super interesting, because if that's also true, it brings back the question of what are the personnel decisions that are John's and which are Pete's. And I don't know. I still think at the end of the day, Pete's having to agree with all of those moves.
Oh, 100%. There's not a single move that's being made that isn't blessed by Pete, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Or probably simultaneously blessed by John. I really do think these guys are in lockstep for the most part.
So we only got a little bit of time left, but we should talk a little bit about the playoffs. That happened.
Oh my God, it's been so good.
Yeah, for playoffs not having the Seahawks in it has been pretty entertaining, I would say. What's kind of been your reaction to what you've seen in the playoffs? What are you and what translate that to the Seahawks? When you're seeing it, what are you thinking about? What are your takeaways?
I guess my main concerns are that the NFC West is getting stronger, and we see that the Rams are finally, back in another Super Bowl appearance. The Niners went from being 3-5. People forget they started 3-5. They were horrible. Mm-hmm. Literally, people were calling for Kyle Shanahan's head.
Yep.
Midway through the season. And, look, they just made another, their season is a massive success, in my opinion. There's a lot to be, I have a lot of doubts about whatever the heck his name is, Trey Lance, but I guess my number one, several different stream of consciousness observations. The NFC West is getting stronger. That's concerning me. I'm also glad Tom Brady retired, so he's not in our conference anymore. Yep. But from a rooting perspective, my number one priority is that the Rams or the Niners do not win the Super Bowl. Obviously. And I'm not one of those people that roots for their division. Some people do that. I think that's a little weird to me. Yeah. So I was actually rooting for the Chiefs and the Bills, because I truly believe they were the two best teams remaining in the playoffs. I've been a firm believer that if the Bills had gotten past the Chiefs, they'd be in the Super Bowl right now. That's how good I think that football team is. But I have some real concerns about the Bengals beating the Rams and their matchup with them. That Bengals offensive line is a complete and utter disaster. It got worked by the Titans. They had 9 sacks on them or something like that, and they barely won the game. So it's been an exciting playoffs. That's just my stream of consciousness thoughts, but I'm really fearful that the Rams are going to take this one.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I was pulling so hard for the Bills. It just would have been so awesome. And I still think they're the best team. I honestly think they're the best team in the NFL this year.
The Bills are?
Yeah. And, Patrick Mahomes is he's just that guy. And he just does things sometimes that, you just have to tip your cap. But with the Bills out, I was absolutely hoping for the Chiefs. And I was like, man, if the Bengals, I have nothing against the Bengals.
Yeah.
I like Joe Burrow. The Bengals haven't won a Super Bowl. I like Joe Mixon. I like Jamar Chase. I like Trey Hendrickson. I love Jesse Bates is freaking amazing safety. I like Trey Flowers. I mean, unreal cornerback. I mean, all pro level guy. Where did they get him?
Can I give like a small hot take?
Yeah, please.
First of all, fuck the 49ers and that garbage ass fan base. I fucking love seeing them lose. Okay, but I have a critique on their like post game reactions of that fan base. Why are they all assuming that Jimmy G is not going to be a 49er next year?
He's got a $25 million cap hit.
He had that this past year.
Yeah.
Do you really does Kyle Shanahan really believe that Trey Lance is ready to be the full-time starter?
I think I had the same thought, and I looked at their cap situation. I looked at their players.
I'm not convinced he's gone, man.
I don't know how you take a guy top 5 and don't play him for 2 full seasons.
He did not look great in his rookie season.
He didn't. And it wouldn't be like the craziest thing, but
I really don't think it's that crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, Kyle Shanahan, if you're listening, you just got to the NFC Championship game with Jimmy Garoppolo, so you owe him.
If that's what you're trying to do, I'm with you. I mean, they absolutely should keep Jimmy G. Like he is their answer for sure.
I'm just saying they might keep him. I think the chances are higher than people actually think.
Yes. I agree. Actually, I don't think that's crazy. I just think the chances are still pretty small, but I do think that the chances are higher than people realize. And I agree as well. Like it was the first time I can ever remember, honestly, I was rooting for the 49ers. Like I was literally like, were
you really?
I was like, I wanted them to win. I've never felt that before. And it was mainly because I thought that whichever team from the AFC got in would have a better chance to beat the 49ers than the Rams.
I will not vocalize publicly the situation that I was rooting for.
I just, I think the Bengals are in for a world of hurt with the Rams. And I don't know, like the Titans had 9 sacks against that offensive line. Mm-hmm. Telling me that Von Miller, Aaron Donald, and Leonard Floyd are not going to just wreak havoc. And I just, I don't know. I mean, we have to hope that their defense does take the ball away a decent amount. So maybe Matt Stafford will make a few Jaquiski Tart throws. Fell for that guy, dude. I mean, that's like it's not a Super Bowl at the 1 yard line play, but it is a play for a player at his level. He will probably never get another chance to make a play as impactful as that play would have been. Most likely, not for sure, but I think there's a decent chance they get to the Super Bowl if he makes that pick. Anyway, so yeah, I am not optimistic about the Bengals. I think for the Bengals to have a chance, I think it's got to be their defense that plays well. I think Burrow's probably gonna be able to manufacture some amazing plays. Joe Mixon might run a little bit. But I am kind of curious to see Jamar Chase and Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah.
That could be fun.
Jesse Bates is a pretty fun player too.
I love that guy. Like there's not a lot of safeties that jump off the page, but that guy for sure. He's a free agent, by the way.
Yeah. He'll get tagged, but I mean,
yes, he will.
He's a fun player.
All right, dude. Someone just said that I need to put the crack pipe down because I was cheering for San Francisco.
I actually do think you need to. That's insane.
I really didn't want either of those teams to win. And I think San Francisco would have absolutely lost in the Super Bowl. Absolutely. Like I had very strong confidence they were going to lose in the Super Bowl. So,
okay. So that was the rooting interest. Okay. I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, I think we ended up with what is probably the worst possible scenario if you're rooting for the NFC West to lose. So yeah. I think the line's probably up to 5 points by now. I mean, it's like, yeah, I bet it wouldn't be surprised me if it gets up to 6. So are you going to do anything for the Super Bowl? Are you going to like go to a party? You're going to throw a party? You're going to, COVID it up? What are you going to do?
Yeah, my wine, I already got COVID. So, I got it. I just got over it a few weeks ago. Well, like 10 days ago. but my local wine bar is just throwing like a locals only type of potluck. We're gonna put it up on a projector screen, play some fun games, and get belligerently drunk. So
That's awesome.
I think, that's the plan. How about you?
I haven't figured it out yet. It's percolating at the moment, but we are planning most likely to do our Ring of Honor patron dinner around draft time, maybe end of April.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'll be able to come up here, but I think if we do it, then we should also coordinate the Jake and Stacy Matador experience. We've got to convert Stacy into someone we can talk to again.
Yeah, I'm wide open for April. I mean,
all right.
Yeah, April, May, June. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to do a little bit later. Some of the Ring of Honor folks saying summer gets a little harder because people have plans. So
that's fair.
If folks haven't already joined, there's still actually opportunity to join the Ring of Honor. There's a few spots left.
We also have a promotion actually going for the Ring of Honor. If you join the Ring of Honor, you also get a complimentary subscription to my OnlyFans. So join.
True.
Posting new content daily, lots of videos, lots of images.
I was watching a South Park today where they had Butters act as the internet filter for a number of celebrities, where he would read everything and only give them the good stuff. I absolutely would think people would need to hire someone to filter your OnlyFans posts. It is absolutely necessary. So yeah, folks, if you haven't already, give the show a like. We'd appreciate it. We plan on bringing up a bunch more great guests. We're on a good streak and having fun doing it. And go to patreon.com/hawkblogger, sign up. Now, before we leave you heard at the beginning, this is the 199th episode. Now, we were planning to do a show tomorrow, which would have been our 200th. But then we're like, oh shit, it's our 200th. We want to take a little bit of time and see if we can do something a little bit more than just a normal show. So this will be our show for this week, 199th episode. And we are in the planning phases of what we can do for our 200th show to celebrate with all of you, become a great community, hundreds of people over on the Slack channel at patreon.com/hawkblogger, raise a bunch of money for charity, continuing to do it. And we're now, we're closing in on 8,000 subscribers on YouTube. Please subscribe. It's great to do it. Give us a like. Give us some reviews on Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Google Play, all those places. All helps the show expand and get better guests. And, maybe even convince Evan to go to triple figures for days of yoga in a row. Like, let's see if you can get it all the way to 100, man. I'm on day like 70 something of P90X. And so like, I'm with you on these consecutive exercise things, but not yoga. I can't do yoga that many days in a row.
Heated yoga is so fun though.
Did you say heated yoga?
That's what I do. Yeah.
I don't know how you do that, dude. You're already in a hot environment. I'm schwitzing just like thinking about that.
Bro, it's like 109 in that room. It's not that bad.
It's the odors alone. Like,
you actually don't. Have you ever done heated yoga?
I've done it once. Yeah.
You don't really smell anything. Or maybe that's COVID that took away my smell. I don't know.
I don't know, dude. Yeah, that it was not my thing. I heat up on my own. I don't need extra temperature added to my exercise routines, but I'm happy it's working for you. You look great. It's good to see you. And yeah, we're going to figure out what we're going to do for show 200. It's going to be fun, dude.
I am so excited. I cannot believe we are reaching 200.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, and the secret is, I'm pretty sure we didn't count all the shows. I'm pretty sure we're way past 200 at this point, but we're not going to talk about that. We're just going to count this as
we're
200.
Professionals.
We're going to make it.
We do a lot of show prep. We have a ton of shit that, goes into planning these shows. And yeah, we definitely just don't like show up and talk.
Yeah. All right, dude. Well, thanks for tonight. It was good seeing you. Good to see you're feeling better. And thanks everyone for listening. So take care. Have a good night. Go Hawks. And we will see